Yo, what is up, YouTube? It's your boy Rudy Ortiz, Socalepoxypools, coming at you today with a special edition presentation of this epoxy pool paint restorations. Today we're going to be working with a few different products, and we're going to go ahead and label this one here the ultimate guide to doing it yourself when it comes to epoxy pool paints and pool paint products. And today we are going to be working with a brand by the name of Olympic Pool Paints. Olympic Pool Paints is a paint brand that is actually manufactured by Kelly Tech. Kelly Tech Coatings is the company that manufactures paints and special adhesives for not only Olympic brand, but they also manufacture for, I believe it's Remutech, and I believe it's In the Swim. And they also manufacture the epoxy pool paint for the Smart Seal Duraseal brand, which is the brand that most of you have seen if you've watched some of my other videos. We have been fortunate to receive some products that they want us to test out, so we're going to go ahead and put them to the test, and we're going to do this one here at the ultimate do-it-yourself restoration pool renovation site, which is here at home with me. So let's take a look at this video. Hope you guys enjoy. This is the ultimate restoration when you're dealing with epoxy pool paint and pool paint products, and let's get to it. Let's go. This is what we're dealing with. So here you see a very neglected typical backyard. There was a bunch of stuff there that I had stored in the back, and also a bunch of green plants and wild leaves that had grown from my neighbor's yard through the cement and over to my backyard area. And so unfortunately I hadn't been paying much attention to it because I had been busy doing pools during the height of the pool season, restoring season. And so what you see here is, again, a typical neglected home, but we're going to change all that, get this at least up to par and make it look nice. So here we are on day number 2, and as you can see, or we'll see here, we've gone ahead and we removed a lot of the green and a lot of the wild plants that were growing in the back. We went ahead and got those out of the way, and we went ahead and we got rid of the green water, at least most of it, to be able to get us to the preparation step of working on the swimming pool. Very important that you get all the green plants or any debris that could basically fall into your swimming pool while you're working on it. The best bet is just to make sure you clean up all your area. So after having removed all the water and having removed all the debris, we decided to go ahead and remove and replace the old swimming pool tiles around the entire swimming pool. The tiles that were previously on there were pretty old, and so I figured, well, if we're gonna do all the work and restore the swimming pool with epoxy pool paint, we might as well remove some of the tiles. So we started removing that, and the way we went about it was basically by using this all-in-one tool that had a ceramic cutting tip that we attached to it. And you can get one of these guys at the Home Depot, or if not, Harbor Freight carries them as well. But these are all-in-one tools. That's an all-in-one tool that I'm using. They're by Rigid. And basically what we're doing here is we're cutting the grooves along the top side of the tile and then on the bottom side of the tile, and basically run that through all the way around the pool. And then after that, we took a SDS rotary hammer with a bit, and we decided to drill those out. So basically the rotary hammer drill did most of the work, and since it had already been cut from the grooves on the top and the bottom on the tiles pretty much came off very easily. And as you can see here, we try to keep the line as straight as possible and remove any excessive cement that may be still loitering in the back once we remove the tiles. But for the most part, they all pretty much came out nice and flush, so we had a nice draw. After doing that, we went ahead and we applied some hydraulic cement to the pre-existing cement area around the tile area. And basically what that did is it allowed us to have a fresh new coat of cement, not too thick, not too thin, just barely enough to be able to give us a new coat to be able to hold when we applied the mortar, and we applied the new tiles over the mortar. So basically hydraulic cement added to the pre-existing cement, And then after that, you can go ahead and start placing the tiles with ceramic tile adhesive, which comes in different formats. One being the epoxy adhesive mortar that you can purchase at any location, any hardware store. And what you want to use is you want to use a non-sagging type mortar whenever you apply swimming pool tiles, so that they don't start sagging down, and so that the bond that it create is pretty sturdy and it holds up all the tiles. Here you see the tiles after we had already added the cement and the mortar, and came out pretty decent. And here you see the tiles once they were pretty much complete, and after we added the grout that goes over the tiles to give it that finished look. And also pay attention to the bottom line of the tile area, which we will be plastering or replastering to make sure that we cover those areas as well, so that we have a flush, straight line from tile to swimming pool. Next step here was to acid wash the pool, and you do that by simply getting muriatic acid and applying it to like a flower pot, and then using 50-50 depending on how heavy the wash needs to be. You can use a 50-50 ratio of muriatic acid and water, and spray it down on the flooring and the walls, brush it out with the brush, and then hose it down with either a pressure washer like I'm doing here, or you can even wash it down with the water hose with sufficient pressure. Don't forget that once you finish removing the acid from the wash, add STP, which will stabilize the acid, so that way it doesn't keep eating away at the cement or the flooring or the plaster. So once we had ourselves a clean surface and had already acid washed the foundation, we went ahead and we added some of this plaster to the underlying areas where we had placed the tiles, just to make sure that we covered all the areas. So you want to make sure that you do that all the way around, so that we have a flush straight line between the tiles and the pool walls. Also, after you apply this, you want to make sure that you sand it down, so that way it's nice and even, and pretty much hides any of the previous cuts that you've made when you remove the tile. So the next step here is to add tape around the tile area, add it between the tile line and also the pool line, so that when you're painting it and epoxying it, you don't get any epoxy paint or epoxy primer on your newly applied tiles. Or your older tiles even. You want to make sure you cover those up. Remember, this epoxy stuff gets really sticky, and it is really hard to come off. So if you get some on your tiles, you're going to have a hard time getting it off later. The best assurance you can have is just to make sure that you apply frog tape or any type of tape with good adhesive that will cover those areas. So once we've gone ahead and taped up the areas, we want to make sure that we get all our items that we're going to be using to apply the initial primer coat. And so you want to make sure you prepare yourself, having everything nearby, to avoid you having to either stop what you're doing, halfway through, and to make sure that you got all the tools you will be needing to apply the epoxy primer, and as well as the paint. So here basically are the tools that I use. An extension pole to be able to cover those areas that are hard to reach. You want to make sure you have yourself sufficient primer. Here is the Gunzite primer, which I used here by Olympic brand, and basically it comes in a 2-part catalyst, as you can see there. You'll see me applying it here in a second, but you want to make sure you have that. You want to make sure you have yourself some shop towels to be able to clean up any of the mess that you should have or spill in case it does happen. And you want to make sure you have yourself a mixing rod along with a roller and a paintbrush to be able to cover those areas where paint rollers can't cover. Once you got everything prepped up and you're ready to apply the primer, make sure that you mix the primer correctly. When you buy this epoxy primer, you will get a quart of this epoxy B, part, and then which is a catalyst, and also you'll get about 3/4 of the way filled gallon of epoxy primer. When you mix those two together, you get your full gallon of epoxy primer, and that's what you're going to be mixing in thoroughly to be able to get you that ready to use epoxy primer coat that you need. And basically the way that I go about it is I get myself a mixing rod along with the drill driver, and I make sure that I stir up all the catalyst part, which is the brown caramel looking part here of the primer. And if you're paying attention, you can see how it starts to disappear. And basically the way that you can tell that this stuff is ready to mix and it's ready to apply, is when you see all the caramel brownish catalyst part disappear into the gallon of white primer. Once you've mixed it thoroughly, you can go ahead and put the mixing rod away and start priming your pool. The way that I usually go about it is I like to cover those areas that are going to be more harder to reach later on as I'm filling in the pool. And those areas include the curves and the step areas like you see here. And basically those areas I cover with the brush, and then I go and I start priming from the deep end and come into the shallow end. Once I get to the shallow end, if that's where my steps are, then it'll make it easier for me to simply finish priming the pool with the roller that I'm using, and not have to worry about all the little indentations or hard to reach places that are not covered, because I've gone ahead and I've covered them ahead of time. So make sure you cover all those areas that are going to be hard to reach, including steps or any steps that are on the deep end as well. Make sure you get those with the brush, cover them thickly with a nice thick coat of epoxy primer, and that's going to give you your overall best results. And just take your time when you're doing all this, when you're applying the primer. When you rush it, you may not cover all areas. And remember, the more you can use or the more you can apply of this epoxy primer, the less epoxy pool paint you are going to need when you're finishing your swimming pool. Epoxy primer is expensive, but epoxy paint is even more expensive. So you'd rather use more of the primer than you do the paint, because the primer is going to give you that flush draw that you want to make sure that you have before you apply the epoxy pool paint. So make sure you cover it, any areas with a nice thick coating, and that's going to make your project look a lot better when you're done. Also, make sure you remove any debris or any trash that has fallen into the pool since you first started before you apply any of the primer, because this is going to make your swimming pool project look a lot much nicer and cleaner once you have all that little debris, trash removed as you're applying this stuff. So what I do is I usually carry with me either a broom and a pan to be able to remove any debris or any trash that falls into the pool while I'm applying this primer. Because you will have like little debris and stuff fall into the pool when you're working on it, especially if you're in an area where there's a lot of trees or a lot of debris that constantly falls, or where you have a lot of wind that comes through. Make sure you clean up all the debris. Remember, 90% of this job is all preparation, so the better prepared you are, the more prepared you are as far as like having the area clean and ready for a paint, the better result you're going to have towards the end. So that's what we're doing here, and we're applying it with a brush, and then we go ahead and grab a roller and just coat the areas. Again, see how it's applying on the step area? That's going to be really hard to get if I'm just using a roller from the beginning, but because we've already covered the areas that are hard to reach with the paintbrush, it just makes the rolling part that much easier. And so that's the way we apply it. You can also have a paint tray to put the primer on if you need to. I just like to apply my stuff thick just to make it that much more of a flush top coat when I'm ready to apply the epoxy top coat paint. It's literally up to you, but again, I get the best results applying this primer thick, and that usually gets the job done and provides me with the overall best results. So following the primer, you want to make sure that it dries overnight. At least give it 24 hours to dry, and then you want to go ahead and add your top coat. Now here we're using the Olympic pool paint brand, and this here is the color ice blue. And again, this is the Olympic ZERON Epoxy Pool Paint by Olympic Pool Paints, and this is the product that we've been using here. and that we were fortunate to get our hands on. Shout out to the people out at Kelly Technical Coatings, and shout out to the people at HT Paints, as well as the people at Olympic. This product here is amazing. I've been using it here for the last few months, and it's going to be the same as the Smart Seal Duraseal brand, which if you've watched some of my other videos, you see me rave about as far as what the product is and what it does and how great it is. And the reason that it's going to be the same is that it's made by the same manufacturer. So when you're out there shopping for epoxy pool paint, whether it be the Olympic brand, the Duraseal brand, or the Induswin brand, they all come from the same manufacturer, which produces a great swimming pool epoxy coating, the best in the business. And these are all produced, manufactured by Kelly Technical Coatings, which is now owned by Camcoat and HT Paints. So shout out to Jared, shout out to Melissa, and yeah, so this is the Olympic pool paint in the epoxy version in the ZERON color ice blue. They also have this color in a white and a darker blue, which would be your bikini blue, and also I believe there's a mystic blue, which is a little bit lighter as well too. But great product by Olympic Pool Paints. So here's the last and final step. Make sure you allow for a minimum of 3 days to allow this paint to dry after you've added the top coat. Here's the end result. There you see our flush finish of the epoxy top coat paint in the color ice blue. Again, this is the Olympic ZERON brand by Olympic Pool Paints. And yeah, this is what we ended up with. This is after 3 days of dry time. And we're ready to fill it up with water. So here's a quick tip after you've applied water or added water to your swimming pool. Don't be so quick to run to the pool supply store and pick up chemicals to try to balance out your water. Don't add any chemicals to the water right away. The reason that most people are used to doing that is because obviously if you have an old pool with old water, you try to maintain the water, and by doing so you add chlorine, or you go and you try to level out the pH balance of your swimming pool water. In this case, you're going to have brand new water in your swimming pool, so there's no need to do that. I would say for a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how heavy you use your swimming pool. But try to avoid that right away, so that way you can allow this epoxy top coat to cure correctly without adding any type of chemicals to the newly painted surfaces. I usually wait about 2 to 3 weeks before I start applying any chemicals or any chlorine to the water to allow the epoxy to cure correctly. The same thing applies to any type of vacuums that you may be used to using, or any robotic vacuum cleaners that you may have in your swimming pool or may have had prior to you painting the pool. Steer away from those for at least a couple of weeks. You don't want to add any extra suction to the top coat. You just epoxied, and in doing so, it'll allow your epoxy to cure correctly without you doing any damage to it. All right, so here's your night view shot. Now we still have some stuff over here that we gotta get rid of, but we made our way around. And yep, that's what we got going on here. So pretty big difference, right? Substantially. So the bar is back. All right, so here you go. And so this is our final result. This is what we got going on here. There's a patio. We're using all the trash and debris before. Nice little umbrella. Got some floaties, some good stuff there for the kids. And your epoxy pooled. Been swimming in it for a couple of days, so got a little bit of dirt down below, but nonetheless, this is the final product. You can see there's a tile that we replaced. We went ahead and we resurfaced the diving board and cleaned up the slide, and again we epoxied it with the Olympic pool paint brand in the color ice blue. And yeah, so pretty much the end result. We got the lazy cat still here, and looks a lot different now. But yeah, so all in all, turned out pretty well. Not too bad, not too shabby. So again, my name is Rudy Ortiz, Socalepoxypools. Thank you guys for watching this video. Hopefully you guys are able to get something out of it. If you guys haven't had a chance to subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the like button. We definitely appreciate all the support and the love. And again, coming to you from the city of Norwalk, California, here at my home. My name is Rudy Ortiz, Socalepoxypools. And well, we'll be seeing you on the next one. Peace out.